Hi, this is Regeline Sabat, also known as Gigi. You're listening to Walk With Me podcast. My guest today is Eric Hudson. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome, and I'm honored to have you here today. Now, why don't you start off by telling us about you and where you're from?
Sure. I'm from originally from Chicago. I grew up in the city of Chicago, South Side, and as well as the surrounding suburbs of Chicago area. And so that's my home turf. And right after high school, I left the bird's nest, so to speak, and went down south to the state of Alabama, where I attended Alabama A&M University. Played football there. I grew up playing football, so I took that to college with me. Played college football, and once I graduated, studied business management, and went to an army after that. But that's pretty much the gist of where I'm from.
I love it. Now, tell us more about your experience growing up in lower class socioeconomic environments.
My experience, well, just in a nutshell, the typical, in my lineage, I think, well, I don't think I know part of the the pattern was pretty much, people bearing children at a young age, not quite financially prepared for that responsibility, so to speak. And that just kind of plays a domino effect from generation to generation. And so growing up, there were, now don't get me wrong, I've always had the full support of my parents. I was fortunate enough to have a two-parent home, and they've always instilled in me that I can go after whatever I put my mind to. But we definitely have financial struggles, where I would have to get hand-me-down clothes from cousins and things like that from time to time. It was, we didn't always have a full course meals every day and things like that. But I had a lot of fun growing up. I had a lot of cousins and stuff around me, and so I don't take anything for granted. But yeah, it was a little tough from a financial standpoint. And one thing that resonated with me early on at a early age was that, and I decided pretty young that I wanted to change that trajectory of the kind of the continuous cycle of that financial struggle, financial strife, so to speak, and each generation pretty much having to start from square one, so on and so forth. And I decided that the buck's going to stop with me, and I decided to start dedicating my interests and my studies to learning how to invest. And I've dabbled and dabbed in a lot of ventures and small endeavors, and I've uh, spent a lot of money. I've done a lot of foolish things. I've played around with get rich quick schemes, so I've fallen on my face quite a few times through trial and error. But I've been finding my way, and I pretty much was able to find my purpose. And of course, I'm still learning. We're all still learning. I'm a lifelong student. But yeah, it was a little rough at times growing up in that type of socioeconomic environment. But I wouldn't change it for anything.
I love it. Now, can you explain to the audience how important it is to not allow your circumstance or your surroundings to affect your mindset or who you are as a person, or let it define you as well?
Oh, that's absolutely critical. I mean, see, here's the thing. I mean, we have no control over who our parents are. We can't decide. We can't choose our grandparents. We can't choose our siblings. We can't choose the neighborhood, the environment that we're born into. We can't control the cards that we're dealt with in life at birth. However, what we are in complete control of is how we respond to the environment, circumstances, wherever that may be. So we can't control the environment that we come into, but we can control our fate. I'm a firm believer in that. So it's absolutely critical to not be, uh, don't be a victim. Basically, don't be a victim of your circumstances. Don't don't blame your environment for not being able to get here or get to that point. Don't be a victim. Don't blame the government and all these other excuses that may come about. Uh, and just really, I could have easily. I've had friends growing up, playing sports and so on and so forth, and they got they got pulled into their lifestyle, the drug dealing and joining gangs and walking around with their pants sagging and all that good stuff. And I could have easily got pulled right into that because I was living it every day. But uh, I had good parents at home. I had two parents, and it was I knew early that I didn't want that lifestyle. I wanted different, better. And I never used my environment or circumstances as an excuse to not be able to study hard, practice hard on a football field and to take care of business. So it's absolutely critical to not allow your circumstances, if you come up in, less fortunate or less privileged or whatever you want to call it, socioeconomic circumstances, you can't allow that to define you and the determine the end of your story. Because I like to look at it as a story. I'm an avid book reader, so I look at life as a series of chapters. So chapter one is the very beginning. You have no control over chapter one. The cards that you're dealt, it is what it is. But the storybook ending, that's all on you. So it's absolutely critical to not allow your circumstances to define or determine the outcome or your path forward.
I love that. Very powerful. Now, can you explain to the audience how important it is to maintain a positive mindset?
That's also absolutely critical to maintain a positive mindset. I think, you know, the universe works in a way where if you always down and out, very pessimistic, you're doubting everything, you feel like you can't pursue this because of that, or you're not getting promoted at your job because your boss is out to get you, and just this negative outlook, you put out negative energy, and it's kind of like, a cause and effect. What you put out there is what you get back in return. And so having a negative mentality and being pessimistic, it just, you're fighting against yourself with that type of mentality. So it's also very critical to maintain a positive mindset and carry that forth. Like, for example, if we look at health and fitness, for example, if you're one that's like, oh, I'm getting older, I'm gonna get old and sick anyway, regardless, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I work out, or eat, so I'm just eat whatever, because we all get old and sick and die anyway. So you have that mindset, you're not going to feel compelled to eat right. You're not going to feel compelled to exercise on a regular basis. But on the flip side, if you're of the mindset of, yeah, I'm getting older, such is life, but I still have a lot to look forward to. I still have a lot to live for. I still have a lot to live. My story, I still have a lot to write, many more substantial chapters in my storybook that have yet to be written. There's still a lot of work to be done. And I want to be at my best. And so with that kind of mindset, you look at, okay, I'm gonna be more mindful of what I eat. I'm gonna take care of my body, so on and so forth. So having a positive mindset is huge.
I love it. Now, you own your own company. Can you tell us more about your company, Hudson Wealth Management?
Sure, it's a pretty simple model. It's nothing too complicated, but basically, Hudson Wealth Management is a registered investment advisory firm. And long story short, what that is my particular firm, we specialize in managing client investments in the financial markets. So, just, stocks, bonds, exchange traded funds, index funds, so on and so forth. We manage clients' assets in the financial markets with a long-term, systematic, quantitative investment approach. I know that was kind of like a mouthful, but basically, in other words, we have a very strict rules-based investment approach that's predicated on removing human emotion from the investment process, to where the ups and downs and ebbs and flows of the market doesn't dictate our investment decisions. So we have a very disciplined investment process in place, and it's predicated on my life story, really. Coming from a somewhat lower socioeconomic challenging environment, and making my mind up early on that I'm gonna change that trajectory within my family lineage. I'm not going to be a victim, and embarked on that journey personally, and then at some point in that journey, the light bulb went off. It's you know, instead of just doing this as a personal endeavor, and I'm so into this, I'm so obsessed with changing this trajectory. When I align this in a business model to serve others and doing what I'm already doing, that I'm already obsessed with, and so it just the stars aligned, and that's how I formed the company, Hudson Wealth Management.
I love how you're obsessed with innovation and change and helping others. It's truly amazing. Now, can you tell us more about who your ideal client is?
My ideal client is, I'll say, my ideal client is one who is pretty even keeled, one who is not allowing headlines dictate their investment decisions or overly emotional. They're they're somewhere in a point where they're pretty well established in their career, or they're on that trajectory of being established from a career standpoint. But in the nutshell, my ideal client is someone who is already on track. They have a certain amount of wealth. They know how to. They've done right financially from a saving standpoint, from a budgeting standpoint, living below their means, not overextending themselves, and so now they have enough excess to start actually growing their wealth and making their money work for them. So that's my ideal client. I sometimes I get inquiries from someone who is just starting out, may not have any savings, or um, not that far along in their career, in a really deep hole with debt, so on and so forth. And I have a lot of those general conversations quite frequently. But as a business, that's not what we specialize in. We specialize in, okay, this person, this individual, Regeline, she's established. She's been prudent with her money, with her finances. She's done the right thing. She's not trying to keep up with the Joneses, and now she's positioned to where she has some assets set aside to where she can start putting that to work, to start growing her wealth, not only for herself but for the next generation coming after her. So my ideal client pretty much aligns with that particular prototype, so to speak. So.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned that you also served in the U.S. Army. Can you tell us more about your experience as a U.S. Army combat logistics officer?
Yes, sure. So there I was at on a campus of Alabama A&M University, and my major was in business management. And as I mentioned earlier, I was playing football, and as any little young boy growing up playing sports, you have dreams of going pro one day. And so I'm at Alabama A&M, which is a Division I AA college, and I had a pretty good run. I wouldn't change anything, but um, I got played with injuries and things like that, and then just it didn't work out. Long story short. Uh, so my backup plan to that was to, if this doesn't work out, I'll go serve in the Army, in the military, serve my country for one, first and foremost, and then number two, that'll help me get established career wise, give me some global experience, some leadership experience, going in as an officer. Now, from day one, I was put into a leadership role, and so I did my time there, and it was it was a great experience. I my very first duty station was in South Korea, and before then, I had never been outside the country, and so there I was in South Korea, a brand new lieutenant, fresh out of college, and I had about 50 soldiers that I was responsible for. And then from that point, I've served in numerous locations throughout the United States. Did a deployment to Afghanistan, and did my contract, and then I moved on into the business world from that point.
Amazing. And now you also are a volunteer in your community. Can you tell us more about your experience volunteering for veteran-based programs?
Yes, definitely. So what I like to do is, just volunteer my time going to veteran workshops And these veteran workshops, they're usually like a culmination of different guest speakers that specialize in various different areas. And so you may have someone that come there that's talking about physical therapy. You may have someone there that's speaking about entrepreneurship. You may have someone that's speaking about how to form a business, how to form an LLC, and so on and so forth. And so my particular function is talking about investing, how to invest, how to get started if you want to do it yourself, what's a good metric, what's a good starting point. And it really, I always come there with the presentation prepared, but I'm more of a two-way conversation. I like to have more of a conversational type of presence whenever I'm doing a presentation, so to speak. So it really, most of the time just turns out into a really engaging two-way conversation between myself and the other veterans in the tennis, and I love doing it. So it's always good.
Amazing. Now, you also mentioned that you played college football. Can you tell us more about your experience playing football for Alabama A&M University?
Sure. So it's kind of a funny story how I ended up at Alabama A&M. So kind of rewind the tape a little bit to high school, going into the beginning of my senior year. So before I went to my senior year, I was a Division 1A recruit. I was, all conference. I was in a big Division 6 high school, and I was one of the top 4 players at my high school at the time. Heavily recruited, so on and so forth. But long story short, I ruptured my hamstring, and that really set me back quite a bit. And so those scholarship offers from the big schools pretty much dried up and just disappeared. So it was smaller Division 2, Division 3 schools, and I guess my I didn't have enough humility to accept that, and so I actually committed to a Division 2 school on a football scholarship, and then 2 days before, my family and I were about to get on the road and drive me out there to drop me off at school. I said, you know what? I don't want to go here. A cousin of mine was going to Alabama A&M University, and she was on a road trip with us as well. So we're going to drop me off first in Iowa, and then going down south to drop her off. And I'm like, hey, she's going to Alabama A&M. It's a bigger school. It's a bigger division. I can have more exposure. I think my talents will be better suited at a bigger school. And so I just pulled the plug and made a last minute decision and said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go to Alabama A&M. And I didn't even apply until we arrived on campus. But fortunately, the same day I applied, I got accepted, and everything was just rushed. I had to, rush to registrar's office and financial aid and all this other stuff, and and hurry up and get myself situated and get a dorm and all that stuff. And somehow, some way, I was able to start on time for the first day of classes, and I ended up trying out for the football team at Alabama A&M, and joining the team as a walk-on, and working my way up from that point. But it was a good experience, once I started to really get my footing and getting the type of playing time that I worked so hard for, pretty much having to start from scratch, because coming from my junior year in high school, from all these big Division 1 schools that were recruiting me, to all of a sudden having to pretty much start from the bottom, so to speak, and work my way up the rung, which had pretty much been a story of my life, and how I preferred anyway to work my way up. But once I started to really get some traction, boom, I got hit with another injury, tore some ligaments in my left foot, and that was pretty much it. That's one of those injuries where there's no amount of rehab or there's no surgery or anything that can get you, snap back into place like that. You just have to sit out for X number of months for it to heal on its own. And so that was that. And once I rested and recovered and I was fully healed, I went with my backup plan, and went to join the Army ROTC program that was on campus, and that started my journey to the United States Army. So
Sounds like you had quite the journey, and you're truly a warrior. Now, can you tell us more about some of the projects you're currently working on?
yeah, sure. So of course, my business is ongoing. Hudson Wealth Management. That's pretty much the centerpiece of my universe, so to speak. And so just day to day servicing clients, deploying the investment strategy, managing investment portfolios, deploying assets, in a strategic quantitative fashion that we have in place, onboarding new clients, talking with prospects and so on and so forth. Just regular business things that comes with running an investment advisory firm. Uh, and in addition to that, another endeavor that's acu- consuming quite a bit of my time these days is that I'm currently back in school. I'm working on a PhD in finance. So that, of course, that involves a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of case studies, and so on and so forth. So between those two endeavors, that's pretty much my life right now. I'm in my second semester with the PhD program right now, and I started on June 1st of this summer, and it's definitely gotten a little bit more intense since the first semester, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. So,
Congratulations on working towards obtaining your PhD.
thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now, Eric, can you tell us more about the challenges you've experienced in your life?
Challenges. Well, I've touched on a little bit about my upbringing, right? About some of the financial challenges growing up, and I've experienced some challenges, through my adult life, as we all have. Like, I can remember one case where I was still in an undergrad down there in Alabama, and I actually walked home to my apartment one day with a eviction notice on my door, on an apartment my door. So that was a time where, even in school, things that got really hard. I wasn't in, I didn't have the luxury, so to speak, to be able to reach back home when I was in a pinch financially. So uh, that's another place where kind of, maybe coincidentally or as accidentally, that entrepreneurship bug became born, because I had to figure out a way to earn money. So on campus, I had several small endeavors going on where, back then we still had like actual DVDs and CDs and things like that. So I became that guy on campus, the go-to guy for, getting DVDs and CDs, and I had another business venture going on when I was in school where I had found a connect overseas in China, where I had started purchasing different clothing and things like that at wholesale prices, and I would have it delivered to my dorm room, and I would type up little brochures, with prices and everything on it, pretty much like a catalog. And I would hand them out on campus, and so I had that going on as well. So I was putting some pretty I went to some pretty tough situations through my initial years in my adult life. I just had to fight through it. It taught me to fight through it, because I had to figure it out. I couldn't run back home to mama and daddy to bail me out. It was all on me. So I had to learn pretty quick. And again, I bumped my head several times financially, but in hindsight, those early lessons and those early financial hardships, I think, kind of sped up my development in terms of getting to where I am now from a financial standpoint. So uh, definitely some trials and tribulations, but we all go through it, and as long as we make it through it, we come out on the other side bigger, stronger, better, smarter, and ready to take on the next challenge.
That's right. As my friend Chip Baker says, go get it. You definitely know how to go get it when you
That's a
want it.
good one.
Yes,
Mhm.
sir. Now, was there a time in your life journey where you experienced an aha moment?
An aha moment. Yes. So initially, before I started Hudson Wealth Management, my registered investment advisory firm, initially I had set out on, my thought process was to go work for an existing firm, an established firm, wealth management firm, get a few years under my belt working for someone else, and then strike out on my own. I also received this advice from a financial advisor who had been in the game for like 20, 25 years. So, and who had given me the advice as well. Hey, I think you should, you really be setting yourself up for failure. You just jump out there by yourself with no experience in wealth management. And so I went on a series of job interviews for various different wealth management firms. I won't call out any names, but pretty much as I was going through these series of interviews, there was a common theme that stood out from each interview, from each company to the next. And some of those common themes were they want you to have 200 to 250 list of contacts, of names, addresses, phone numbers, and so on and so forth. Basically like a prospect list. And there's specific like quarterly quotas, there's annual quotas that you have to meet from a sales standpoint in terms of gathering assets under management. And the third common theme I noticed is that each of those companies had proprietary financial products that they wanted me as the potential employee to push to the marketplace. And so it just didn't sit right with me. That's not, after going through those series of interviews, I realized for one, this is not how I want to do business. I don't want to be, and I'm not knocking it, to each their own. But I'm not the natural salesperson. I don't have that type of gift of gab, and that just doesn't fit my personality. I didn't want to be held to a commission based compensation model to where I may be placed into a vicarious situation where, and it happens all the time in the financial advising industry where, when you have financial advisors, wealth managers that are under this quota based, commission based compensation model. Whereas, I've known people who worked in industry where it's around Christmas time and this guy, he has to choose between being at home with his family on Christmas or take this 3 hour road trip downstate to meet with a prospect so he can try to meet his yearly quota. Otherwise, his job is on the line. And of course, he had to choose between that and family. And he was on the road on Christmas Day, chasing money pretty much, trying to get this client to sign up. And so that type of model did not sit well with me as I was going through the interview process. And I didn't want to be restricted to specific financial products that I have to push for that specific firm. The main reason is depending on who you are, depending on the client, and if I get this client to join, company XYZ as a client, the limited amount of financial products that company XYZ may not be a good fit for this particular client. And so I don't want to be restricted to just a set base of financial products that I'm pushing. So that, along with the culmination of, I sat there and did some deep reflecting on, what, I've been managing my own investments, my own capital for a little over a decade at that point. So I know how to invest. I know how that process works. And I know the type of business model that I don't want as a wealth manager. So with the combination of those things, that was my aha moment. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need to go work, several years under a business model that I don't believe in. I know how the process works. I just need to do some more homework on how to actually start the business, how to get, I didn't know where to start to even begin to formally a registered investment advisory firm. But of course, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of legal documents involved, background checks, and investment law exams that I have to sit through, study for, and test out of, and so on and so forth. And I had no idea where to go, where to start, but I just said, hey, I'm gonna start where I am, and then figure out what the next step is. And that's another thing, originally, what's helped me get to where I am now. I think that kind of uh, intimidates people sometimes, or or scares them away from going out there or whatever it may be. Don't look at the entire picture, because if I had sat there and looked at, you know, start a registered investment advisory firm, I have to figure out the technology that I'm gonna use to manage assets, website name, a business name, how to formulate an LLC, how to get registered, go to all of this stuff. And it can easily become overwhelming. And I just threw all of that out the window. And I said, what is step one? And I identified step one and I executed step one. And once step one was executed, I went on to step two, step three, and so on and so forth. The age old saying, if you want to build a house, don't get hung up on the visualization of the entire house itself. Just focus on carefully laying one brick at a time as precisely as you possibly can, and then move on to the next brick and the next brick and so on and so forth. And before you know it, you have your house. And so that was my approach. That was my aha moment. And, I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm very happy with I made that decision. I built the business model that I believe in, serving clients and their best interest. And yeah, it's been great.
I
But that
love
was my aha moment. That was a long-winded version of my aha moment. So
I love it. Build your house brick by brick. Very powerful. Now, Eric,
mm.
we have a question in here that came in from the audience from Justin. He asks, how would you go about teaching our brothers and sisters that live in the struggle how to get on your level, business or career wise, so that they do not have to resort the risk of hustling?
Very good question, Justin. How would you go about teaching our brothers and sisters? I want to break this down. How would you go about teaching our brothers and sisters that live in the struggle how to get on my level of business career wise so that they don't have to resort to the risk of hustling? Okay. Um, for one, I would say start by assuming responsibility. Start by taking extreme ownership of where you are today. Whatever the excuses are, throw them out the window. Once you become an adult and you're out here in this world, and especially if you have the great fortune of being born in the United States of America, but once you become an adult, you can't blame your parents no more. You can't blame your siblings. Don't blame the government. You have control over your destiny. So first and foremost, I would say, Justin, is to assume responsibility for where you are today. Assume responsibility. And then to where you don't have to resort to the risk of hustling. I'm going to assume, Justin, that you're referring to like maybe side hustling or something like that. I would start by, once you, number one, assume responsibility for where you are today, um, start getting yourself on track to getting yourself in a good place financially. Uh, and I know entrepreneurship is the sexy thing today, but I think I'm a little bit more old school in thinking that before you can really truly appreciate and run your own business, um, get some time under your belt working under an existing business, learning how to take care of someone else's property, learning how to take care of someone else's employees and someone else's assets, and so on and so forth. What does it mean to, you know, have to show up on time and have to be responsible for employees if you're in any type of leadership role? Get yourself solidified in an existing business. Start where you are and get a job and do the best that you can at that job, regardless of what that job may be. It Any job, all jobs is a good job, and that's to be quite honest with you, with this whole um, pandemic environment that we've all been experiencing, unprecedented in 2020. And I hear, we all hear the verbiage of essential employees, essential jobs, but I've always struggled with that because I'm like, whatever your job is, if that's your means of honestly and ethically putting food on the table and paying your bills, who's to tell you what job is essential versus what not essential? But that's a whole totally different topic. But I would say, whatever that job is, take pride in it. If you're bussing tables, if you're, working a register at McDonald's, if you're working at a law firm, whatever it is, take pride in it and do your very best at that job. And then continue to work from there, build from there, one step at a time. Live below your means. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Social media. Social media in and of itself is, uh, unfortunately, is having a very negative impact on, most notably, our younger generation. Everyone, I kid you not, when I go out to, if I go out to a restaurant, or I go out to a lounge or whatever, and if I just pause for a moment and I look around, I see so much of this going on. The selfies, the picture taking, and it's like, you know, uh, people are intentionally going out to put together this facade of this, you know, this high class, superficial lifestyle image on social media, rather than just enjoying the actual experience, and instead of focusing on impressing uh, the social media platform, and being hung up on how many likes you get and so on and so forth. Just focus on where you are today, and live below your means. Be financially prudent. Stop trying to impress people who, at the end of the day, don't really care anyway. They're focused on their self. So those would be my words in terms of how to go about teaching our brothers and sisters to live in the struggle. First and foremost, embrace the struggle. You know, that goes back to the storybook example I'm talking about. How I look at life as a series of chapters. Really, the greater the struggle, the greater the story is going to be once you come out on the other side of that. So embrace the struggle. If you're going through hardships right now, it stop posting this fictitious lifestyle on social media. Instead, embrace it. And you may be surprised if, you post a video clip on social media and say, hey, I'm down on my luck right now. I've My car note is past due, whatever the case may be. This is what I'm experiencing right now. This is what I'm working through. Maintaining a positive outlook. These are next steps I'm working on. And I think that what may actually resonate with a lot more people out there than, the typical person may think. So I know it's another age old saying, keep it real. Keep it real. Embrace your struggle and fight through it. And it makes the harder the struggle, the better it makes for a better story. So that's how I look at it.
That's right. And thank you for keeping it real. Now, can you tell us more about what gives you joy in your life, Eric?
What gives me joy in my life? Uh, I would say spending time with family, spending time with my parents and my sisters, my grandparents, never forgetting that's the other thing originally, never forget where you come from, with regards of how far I get in this lifetime. I try to make it a point not to ever forget where I come from, where I came from, and the humble beginnings, and so on and so forth. Uh, so that really helps me stay happy and fulfilled. And then just really just being disciplined, exercising every day, no matter what, 7 days a week, 365, whether or not I feel like it. Pulling an all-nighter to finish a research paper before the deadline, 12 midnight, regardless of whether or not I had a full night's rest the night before, or whether or not, I got, something unexpected popped up earlier that day that completely threw me off track. Just staying disciplined and just getting it done regardless. That those two things, family and just staying disciplined to whatever my current objectives are, and just getting it done no matter what. No excuses, never be a victim, and just get it done. Execute.
That's right. Discipline truly matters, and executing matters.
Hmm.
Now, can you tell us what your best advice to the audience is for walking with purpose and living a life of happiness is?
Walking with purpose and living a life of happiness. So those are two interesting dynamics. And from my personal experience, yeah, I'm just speaking for me, I would say prioritize purpose, prioritize purpose above happiness, because purpose equals meaning. I think I truly believe that each and every last one of us were placed on this earth for a specific purpose. And I feel very fortunate to have found my purpose in life, which is to change the financial trajectory of my lineage from generational welfare to generational wealth. And I've also been able to translate that into a business model. That's my life's purpose. Uh, I and I think happiness is a byproduct of purpose. So rather than trying to focus on what makes you happy, you may not be happy in your current job today. You may not be happy in your current situation. You may not be happy with your boss today. But if what you're doing has purpose and meaning, that's what's most important. And then eventually the happiness will catch up to that. So those are my 2 cents when it comes to purpose and happiness. I think purpose should be prioritized. And then happiness would be like the cherry on top, the icing on the cake. That's a byproduct of having purpose. But I think that uh, we all have a mission. All have a mission. We all have a story. We all have chapter one, and we all have the last chapter of our book. And that's the purpose. That's our meaning in life. And so that's my 2 cents on that.
Very powerful. And now, can you explain to the audience how important it is to have positive self-talk rather than negative self-talk?
Yeah, definitely. Positive self-talk goes back to what I was saying about negative energy versus positive energy that you put out there into the universe. Words are very powerful, and the words that you speak really dictates and has a lot to do with your actions that come behind that. So, for example, for me, uh, I I hardly ever use the word try unless it's absolutely necessary. I don't believe in the word try, for example. My approach is either I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to get in better shape. I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to pursue a PhD in finance. I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to launch and start a registered investment advisory firm. I'm not going to try to do it. What does that mean? I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. Point blank, period. I may fail. When I set out on a journey to establish a registered investment advisory firm, I had, my registration kicked back several times. I had missing information, so on and so forth. I didn't register for my exam properly the first time. I had to reschedule. There was, tons of obstacles along the way. Absolutely, I didn't get it right the first time. It took several attempts in most cases, but I just got it done. There was never such thing as trying to start my business. Once I made my mind up to do it, it was going to get done. Uh, so back to your question of the power of speaking positive words versus negative words. That's another thing of mine. The word try, the word can't. That's another one of my pet peeves. I don't allow myself to regularly use those words because I know the impact that it will have on my actual drive. So uh, it has a really big impact, the words that you use in terms of positive or negative.
Absolutely amazing. Eric, thank you so much for being a guest on Walk With Me podcast. Now, where can the audience find you?
Sure. So I do my website for the firm, for my registered investment advisory firm is hudson-wealth-management.com. And you can also find me hanging out on LinkedIn. Just type in Eric, middle initial K, last name Hudson, and I should pop right up. Same thing on Facebook. You can find me there. Um, and yeah, I'm usually pretty easy to get in touch with through those channels. Very responsive, and so definitely feel free to reach out.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check out Eric at his website and on his LinkedIn, Eric K. Hudson. And Eric, again, thank you so much for being a guest on the Walk With Me podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you.